A couple of episodes ago, me and the guys talked about sleepers in the East and Western Conference. One of the teams we did not talk a lot about was the San Antonio Spurs. On today's episode, we want to talk about why the Spurs have one of the more interesting rosters and probably projections in the NBA next season. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, Ben Simmons is close to deciding on which team he's going to go to. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to talk a little bit about the Spurs. I want to start off here with the Spurs. The Spurs have a roster that I'm extremely interested in, right? Like, when you look at the balance of the Spurs roster, you have a veteran like De'Aaron Fox, you have Harrison Barnes as well, who are probably going to be two veteran starters. They're going to be surrounded by a lot of young players, and Dylan Harper, right? Victor Wembanyama as well, who's going to be in that as well. You have Stephen Castle, who's going to be in the rotation in this. Carter Bryant, who had a pretty solid summer league as far as defensively, but lacks some things offensively. You still got Keldon Johnson on the team, Jeremy Sohan. Like, this is a team that could either I think disrupt some of the balance in the Western Conference, especially if Wemby's able to be healthy, or it could be a team that is just a young team, an up-and-coming team that's scrappy, that wins some games, but ultimately maybe a little bit disappointing. They won 34 games last year. Now, they did make an acquisition of De'Aaron Fox in the middle of the season, which is what it is there. But you have an opportunity now for the Spurs team to really step up. And it seems like the Spurs are a team that is ready to start getting Wemby some postseason experience, whether that's play-in, whether that's playoffs. They want to get this young core some playoff experience. And when you have a player like De'Aaron Fox as well, who's locked into your roster, you want to compete, right? So this is not a roster that you're sitting back just waiting on. Yeah, you have a lot of young players when you look at it. Carter Bryant, 19. Dylan Harper, 19. Stephen Castle, 20. Wemby's 21. You have Jeremy Sohan, who's only 22 years old. Champagnie, who's 24 years old. You have Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, 24 and 25. You have a nice mix at different levels. And while the Spurs are a team that's also, I think, set up to make a big splash move if they decide to do so, I'm glad they didn't trade for like the Kevin Durant's and things. Not because I don't think that they would have helped them, but I really want to see what this young core can develop and turn into. And so the Spurs are a team that has as many answers as questions, really, when it comes down to it, right? When you look at it, 14th overall pick, Carter Bryant, who defensively was an absolute nightmare on opposing teams in the summer league, right? And so when you look at how he played for the summer Spurs, and he played 6 games over the course for the Spurs over the summer, like no one had as much defensive intensity as he is. And Carter Bryant seems like a player that not only understands what and where his strengths are and how he can impact the game defensively, but he's also a player that's very raw offensively, right? All the defense that he had there, it's not great offensively when it came down to it, right? So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. He only scored 16 total points and grabbed 5 rebounds, heading into the last game against Detroit. And then he shot 3 of 24 from the field, 1 of 12, and from three-point range as well. Carter Bryant is very raw offensively, but the defensive upside there, and still the 3-and-D upside that still is there with Carter Bryant is great. You cannot deny that it's there, right? But he can be a liability on the offensive side of the ball. You look at somebody else like Harrison Ingram as well, who got taken in the second round last year and spent the entirety of the time with the G League team last year. He's a former North Carolina Tar Heel, but he has some questions there as well on him. Then you look at David Jones Garcia. You look at that and some other things there. Like, this team has tons of questions, tons of answers, tons of young, raw talent on it. But for every bit of that, then you look at the Dylan Harper side of it, right? Who he only played in 2 summer league games, but he matched up well with Flagg in that time when it came down to it. And he scored 16 points to Cooper Flagg's 31 points, but then he scored 16 more against the Utah Jazz in his second summer league game, and then he went down. Even though he didn't shoot the ball too well, it is what it is. He made some big plays down there. But this all, to me, really hinges on how ready to go Wemby is. At times last season, opposing teams were able to put wings on Wemby to force him out of the paint and to disrupt his game. And he's a player that he's going to have to learn to grow from that, and he can't continue to allow smaller players to defend him, because then that takes away from what the other teams can do at the paint. Wemby's going to have to learn to punish teams when they switch a smaller player on him. Up until this point, he's not done that consistently, but there's no doubt that he's going to eventually get there. Wemby is an extremely talented player, can get, a player that is a true unicorn, but you're going to have to start seeing some of the refinement from Wemby. And I know that's putting a lot on a player going into his third year. He's only 21 years old. He doesn't turn 22 until January. That's almost halfway into the season. That's how young and raw Wemby still is, right? All that is still there for Wemby. But the Spurs as a team, between the coaching, having De'Aaron Fox there, this is a team that I like predicting what they're going to be at the next level could really go any number of places. You can predict them to be a team that's competing for a playoff spot. You can predict them to be a team that's going to struggle. It can all go multitude of ways for this team. And that's the part about it that makes it so interesting to me, is that the different ways that this thing can go, it really is, they're one of the most intriguing teams in the game of basketball, because a Wemby who hits a third-year leap, I think, can not only project this team or propel this team to be a playoff team, but we're talking about a team that may be able to avoid the play-in entirely, right? And when you look at the Western Conference, it's going to be a tough go. Of course, you got Houston and the Thunder, who's still going to be at the top of that conference, right? No doubt about that. You still got the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are going to be tough there as well. But you got teams that I think that the West, for a team like the Spurs, which could catch teams off guard, even a team like the Clippers, the old Clippers, right? The pace and stuff that and the different looks that the Spurs can throw at them can really put them at a bunch of different places. And so coaching is going to be a big part of this. Development is going to be the hardest part to determine. But while the Spurs no doubtedly are going to be one of the better teams in the league going forward into the future with their young talent that they have here, and they still, and by the way, they still got some draft picks in that mug too that they can still use to improve this team too, right? The Spurs are just a team that very much so intrigues me, not just because of the Wemby aspect of it, but seeing how Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle really grow in this upcoming year. To see a player like Jeremy Sohan, who, thank God now the experiment of Jeremy Sohan at point guard is done. I'm so glad for that. But him at 6'8", 230 pounds, he's a versatile forward going into his fourth year in the league. Now, while he's basically averaged the same points per game every year of his NBA career so far, right around 11 to 11.5 points per game, but he was more refined last year. 53% shooting from the field. We saw from Jeremy Sohan last year. 6.5 rebounds, which was the most of his NBA career as well. Almost a steal per game. Sohan is another intriguing player, and a Sohan that takes another step can help ease up the way that some teams guard Wemby. Also, as far as like putting out opposing wings on him, this is I won't say this is the team to watch. Not saying that. I don't want to gas it at all. But this is still one of the most intriguing teams in basketball for me next season. But let me know how you guys feel on it down below. Not only because of Wemby, looking now at Harper, looking now at as well as like, does Sohan take a step? How does Stephon Castle look in year two? Like, how do you feel about this team and where this team could go next season? Let me know that down below. With that said, last thing that we got for today, only 2 topics today. Ben Simmons is now expected to decide soon between the Knicks, Suns, and Celtics, which reportedly all have offers out on the table for him. And we'll see. He is represented by Bernie Lee. This one comes from Brian Windhorst, who says this. I'm told he's going to probably make a choice in the next week. Knicks, Suns, and yes, Celtics have all been connected to him. It's really interesting to see how Ben Simmons' career is gone, right? A player that, for a couple of years there couldn't even get on the basketball court between the mental health things and injuries and things like that. He was at one point looked at as kind of the next guy up. And the versatility that he had at times leading into all the way up into that 2020, 2021 season before ultimately he took a couple of years back off, right? But this is a guy that was on the uptick, no doubtedly. He offered so much of a mismatch for opposing defenses. He was, as far as his playmaking and rebounding and things like that, a player that at one point was scoring almost 17 points per game, hasn't averaged double-digit points per game since that 2020-21 season, but is still a dynamic playmaker. And I think what he's able to do now at playmaking from the forward position, because teams have actually been playing him at forward with LA and Brooklyn over the last couple of years, that offers a little bit more of a mismatch as far as how you can play your guards. all these teams that are mentioned as teams being interested in him between the Knicks, Suns, and the Celtics all have their things that they can offer. I still think the Suns probably are the team that need his skill set the most, right? But when you have, especially if you're going to start Jalen Green and Devin Booker in a backcourt together, if you're not going to use a true point guard, having a point forward like Ben Simmons out there who can run your offense, who can run those off-ball actions, things like that, could definitely help. And while Ben Simmons isn't necessarily the scoring threat that he was before, he is still a really solid rebounder, and he is still a really good defender, and he's a really good passer. Those passing decisions that he makes are really good. Those things enough can make him be a commodity for some teams. The Knicks, I've always said the Knicks are the fit that I don't necessarily see being the most seamless for him. But again, maybe there's a plan there for him that I don't see. But I think that Suns team, especially with you having, like, right now their projected forward is Dylan Brooks, Royce O'Neal are the 3 and the 4 projected starters for them. Ryan Dunn is going to make a case for himself there. Make no mistake about that as well. But it just seems like this is like that Suns team is a team that really could use Ben Simmons just at what he does well. But Simmons is still a very young player too. Like, very young may be a bit of an exaggeration there. He's still a young player. At 29 years old, he's not over 30 yet. He does turn 30 though he just turned 29. There you go. So Ben Simmons is an interesting figure there. 5 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists last year, 52% shooting. And again, I think on a team like the Suns, you could see even more output from him statistically. And I think that's what the Suns are hoping for. Again, if you're not going to run a traditional lineup, you're not going to go out there and get that true point guard. Getting a guy like Ben Simmons can help you go with what you have there and make your roster make sense. But I also was talking about the Phoenix Suns. They also came to agreement with Jared Butler on a 1-year deal as well. I don't know if that takes them out of the Ben Simmons market, but they are bringing in him last year, who played for the Sixers and for the Washington Wizards. He averaged 9 points, 1.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists as well. So the Suns have already kind of started making moves. I don't know if that means anything for Ben Simmons or not. We shall see. But let me know what you guys think on all that down below. That's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following us at NBA Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. NBA Central Pod, NBA Central Pod at gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. And see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.